Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever the fuck you're tuning in. This is a one man down episode of Backyard Buckets brought to you by Backyard Sports. Ryan is out enjoying some personal time off, so we wish him the best and we will see him next week. But I've got Bentley with me who had to step off camera for a moment, so we'll give him just a moment. But happy Pi Day, everybody. 314, 3.14. And if you celebrated in the year 2015, you could have kept the pattern going. But once Bentley gets back, we'll give him a chance to say hi. But just want to kind of kick things off with a little bit of backstory on our first topic. So Jamal Mosley, who coaches the Orlando Magic, he's been there for 3 years, well, 2.5-ish, a little over 2.5. First 2 seasons struggled, but it's been a team that's been in kind of perpetual rebuild. Combined record over his first 2 seasons of 56 and 108. However, they are on pace this season to have their best record in, I believe it's like 15 years. So they reward him with an extension that will keep him on the sidelines in Orlando, or at least paid by the Orlando Magic until the 27-28 season. So my opinion, well-deserved. I think we've made it pretty obvious on this show. We're pretty clear how at least Bentley and I feel about Orlando. Ryan likes their potential and their length, but the roster composition is one thing that he was hoping they would figure out. But I think we all agree they've got potential to have some staying power here in the Eastern Conference, especially a very weak Eastern Conference right now. Bentley, first off, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I apologize for leaving you high and dry there, but one of the drawbacks of owning the most famous dog in the state of Virginia is that people often come by the house. So, it's always fun though to have Jim stop by. He's a fellow Commanders fan and enjoys talking about football as much as I do. But we're here to talk about basketball.
Yes, we are.
With that being said, I will note there of one football story. Sam Howell was traded to Seattle. I'm just glad to see that the Washington Commanders are being the trendsetters for the NBA and shipping off talent to Seattle for whenever that NBA franchise stands back up. They can have a starting quarterback sitting courtside for their first game.
Yes, they can. So what are your thoughts on the Mosley deal?
Mosley deal. I think it's good. Like you said, it's well-deserved. I cannot hold the first 2 years of his coaching tenure in Orlando against him. They had next to nothing until they brought in Franz Wagner, right? And then Franz Wagner was kind of the starting point for this rebuild that I don't feel like they're done building this roster, but they're on pace to finish 4th in the East, which, I mean, that's really, really good for a team whose best player is in his second year in the NBA, right? Like, we often talk about coaches in terms of doing more with less or doing less with more, right? Like, bad coaches do less with more, aka Doc Rivers. Great coaches do more with less, a.k.a. Eric Spoelstra. I think that Mosley's trending towards the doing more with less category. As much as you and I like this Orlando Magic team, they're not the most talented roster in the NBA. They have their limitations, right? We have talked extensively about kind of the woes of their backcourt. They don't have necessarily that true point guard. They don't really have a guard that can carry them from a scoring aspect, which is why they rely so heavily on Paolo and Franz. But Mosley's making it work. From all accounts, everything I've read and heard is that the guys in Orlando really, really like him and enjoy playing for him. I think to truly be a great coach in Orlando, he probably would have to figure out Jonathan Isaac. Just be like, hey, you should probably play some basketball. That's a joke, by the way. He does not have to figure out Jonathan Isaac. They will be just fine without him whenever he inevitably walks out that door. But I have nothing negative to say about Mosley or the things that he's done in Orlando. I think it's definitely well deserved, and we see again with Miami keeping cores together is very important, especially within the coaching ranks. Spoelstra's been there forever. Pop was forever or is forever in San Antonio, right? I think if you find the guy and you can build the team the way that the players like him and the coach melds well with the players, you pay that guy and you keep him in-house.
Yeah, for sure. And the big word for me is stability, right? We talk about it in all sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can be too impatient, you can be too patient, right? But stability is an important thing. And I think, we've seen a lot of NBA teams, especially, who can be pretty quick on the trigger to fire a coach because it's a very player driven league, right? In other sports, you might not see it quite as frequently in terms of pulling that trigger on a coach super early in their tenure, but we see it a lot with basketball coaches because the star power in the NBA is a big deal. And what does Orlando have right now? Well, they've got a budding superstar in Paolo Banchero, right? We've talked about and sung his praises. Franz Wagner, I think, is kind of a fringe star player in this league. He's a very good scorer of the basketball. He's very important for that team. You mentioned it. They're kind of riding Paolo and Franz when it comes to offensive firepower. And they're making it work, right? And I love that they've rewarded Mosley for weathering the storm of the rebuild because this is a team that almost since like Dwight Howard left, kind of like I know Jameer and Hito kind of held on for a year or two where they were still competitive, but since that era, it's a team that's been basically in perpetual rebuild, right? They've had guys come in, but they leave because they can't necessarily put enough talent around them to really put a team together. And then in the NBA, we see it all the time. You're either paying a bunch of guys or you're paying nobody, right? You're paying a bunch of guys because you've got a good roster put together and you're bringing some vets in to play around these other guys, or you're shooting for as high a draft slot as possible and you're paying nobody to go lose you a bunch of games. And Mosley weathered that storm his first 2 years, as I mentioned, lost over 100 games over the course of his first 2 seasons. And right now, like you said, they might host a first-round playoff series, right? And we talked about that before the season. I got a little bit of sideways looks when I said I think they might host one, right? But they're right in position now, right? And they've kind of also weathered in just within this season. They started out pretty well and then they got really cold. Now they're playing good basketball again. So I love to see it. I love to see the stability. I love to see an ownership group reward a coach for it's the Bryce Brown effect, right? Where Philly kind of kept him around until the process worked, and then they got rid of him right before Embiid started playing, right? So this, in my opinion, is a nice reward from an ownership group in Orlando for a coach that's kind of turned this thing around for them with the infusion of talent, of course. But I think he's done a very good job of, as you put it, doing more with less because this is a super, super young roster, and we don't often see these young rosters win a lot of games in the NBA.
Yeah, how much of that Brett Brown thing was just because he really struggles? Yeah, same guy, whatever. That's his twin brother. How much of his firing was because he just really struggles to speak? He's not good at words.
He's not good at words. You're right.
Yeah.
It was pretty convenient though that right before Embiid got really, really good, they got rid of him, and he was there for 3 years, I believe, during the whole trust the process.
Yeah.
He had to deal with Markelle Fultz and all the other Jahlil Okafors and all those guys.
I believe Brett Brown has the worst win percentage
I think
of any head coach.
I think that's true. Of any coach that's coached more than like 5 games, yeah.
Yeah, like which is crazy.
Bad. Yeah, it's really bad. I think they only won like 50 games during his 3 seasons there. If I had to venture a guess, I would say it's around 50. Yeah. And probably lost 190.
Yeah, it was dark times in Philly.
Very, very dark times in Philly for sure. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some action on the court. Dallas, they've kind of made us think, are they the real deal? And then they kind of fell apart. And they've had some injury issues. Kyrie doesn't seem to be able to stay on the court. That's kind of his MO throughout his career. But right now, Dallas is playing good basketball. Luka's the best basketball player on the planet over the last 2.5-3 weeks. He's on 8 games in a row with a triple-double. 5 of those were 30-point triple-doubles consecutively. Almost got his 6th. He couldn't quite hit one of those force it up jack jump shots when he had 28 points just a couple nights ago. But do you see Dallas as a contender here in the West? Because they're kind of creeping up the standings. They're looking like a team that maybe they can sneak into, 4 or 5 range and kind of hold serve. And can they host a playoff series? Do you see them as a contender in the West?
So we did our contenders and pretenders pod a few weeks ago. That was prior to Luka kind of taking the league by storm, right? All these triple doubles in a row, and it was right after the trade deadline, I think. So we hadn't really seen what the team was going to become with the addition of PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, who, by the way, is chasing a Wilt Chamberlain record right now.
Yeah, he's 4 or 2 shots shy.
Yeah, yeah, I believe you're right. So I've said many times on this show, and I think I probably said it on our football show at one point. The very first NBA game that I watched where Luka Doncic played, I called my dad, which is not something I do a ton. Admittedly, it's one of my flaws. And I said, Dad, this kid is different. There are going to be many things throughout the next decade where it will be a graphic that ESPN flashes that says only players since LeBron to do X, Y, Z. And that's happened. There have been multiple times, right? Youngest to 10,000 points or whatever it is. Youngest to 5,000 since LeBron.
There's been some that go farther back than LeBron.
Yeah.
First since guys like Oscar, first since Wilt, that sort of stuff. We had that graphic we looked at in the group chat a few weeks ago. He was one of 3 players, and the other 2 were Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm always going to believe that Luka Doncic is capable of just about anything on a basketball court, except maybe dunking.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Him and Jokic, the only near 7-footers that just can't dunk.
It's crazy that they're the 2 best players in the world.
Right. They play below the rim.
Yeah. So we've seen him do it in the playoffs before. For my money, this is the best cast of characters and supporting cast, whatever you want to call them, around him. Unfortunately for him, it does not always translate to wins whenever he plays super dominantly. I have no reason to believe that they will not be competitive in the playoffs, right? Nothing that they have shown me on the court says this is not a team that cannot, or this is a team that can't make a long playoff run, right? They have one of the best players in the world. They have a coach who has been there as a player and has coached in the playoffs before, so he understands how it works. He understands how to work the refs. They have a supporting cast that is capable of playing enough defense, I think, that Luka can at least carry them on the offensive end of the floor. Because if you look, I think by the metrics, whatever the defensive metrics are you want to look at, this is his best season in terms of defensive efficiency, right? I think a lot of that has to do from an effort standpoint. When Jason Kidd first got there, they were a top 10 defensive team for a little while. It was kind of wild. I believe that this Dallas Mavericks team has the ability to make it to the Western Conference Finals. It would not shock me, right? And there's a player that I assume we're going to talk about here in a little bit later that may be absent, which could play a role. I think that this team is good enough and they will continue to gel post All-Star break because they are still kind of feeling each other out. Yes, they've been very good with the new additions, but there is always a learning curve, right? There is a gelling period. We say that at the beginning of years. We see it when guys come in. There just is. You have to get minutes together to learn how to play with your teammates. I believe in this team. I believe in Luka Doncic. And throwing Kyrie in there is just an added bonus, right? Because he's a guy that we've seen do it in the playoffs many times. He knows what it takes to win a championship. He learned from LeBron. Off-court stuff aside and injury stuff aside, right? Projecting health and good fortune going forward.
The shape of the globe aside.
Yes, exactly, right? I believe this team is good enough to make it to the Western Finals. I don't think they're good enough to make it to the finals because Denver still exists.
Okay, so I was going to ask you that. So assuming, right, we're going to talk in a moment. I don't want to spoil anything, but assuming this team who right now sits 4 games out of 4th place, game and a half out of 5th place, game out of 6th place, half game, I believe, out of 7th place. So yes, you can look at the standings and say they're in 8th place, and Gary's crazy for saying they might be the 4 seed. But look at the West. It's like the 3 at the top. It was 4 at the top before the guy we're going to talk about in a moment, but the 3 at the top, and then you've got like this jumble of like 27 teams in the West that could be a top 4 team in the West. Shout out Ryan on that one.
Shout out Ryan.
But, so Dallas sits at the 8 seed right now. If, assuming they get to that 4-5 seed, they're going to have to play Denver in the second round. So what you're telling me then is that seeding matters a lot for them.
Yes, very much
in
so.
terms of reaching the Western Conference Finals. You see them as a team that can knock off Oklahoma City. You see them as a team that can knock off Minnesota. You see them as a team that can knock off, say, the Clippers, right? Those are the top 4 teams as we sit right now, along with Denver. But you don't see them as a team that knocks off Denver.
No, and I don't want to spoil our picks for future pods, but yeah, I don't think they're going to beat Denver.
As it sits today on Pi Day.
On Pi Day. Remember this quote because you will hear it again for me. Yeah. I don't think they can beat Denver.
So they need to get all the way to 3, or they need to stay at 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And stay away from Denver. All right.
Yes. That's the worst
Conference Finals. I like it.
That's the worst.
Every team in the West wants to stay away from Denver. It's not unique for Dallas. Yeah.
That for my money, Denver is the worst matchup for Dallas. I think they match up fine with like Sacramento. I think they can match up with New Orleans, who has just been playing incredibly well recently. I think that's a little bit of a tougher matchup, but I think Luka has enough to push them past because they don't like Herb Jones is going to have to guard Luka, right? But he can't guard him for 48 minutes, I wouldn't assume. And then who's going to guard Kyrie? Like there are flaws in that matchup on the New Orleans side. And I think they have enough bodies they can throw at Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson.
That could be a fun series too, getting up and down the floor.
100%. The Suns don't really scare me. I'm a little lower in the Suns, I think, than a lot of other people. But to me, as long as they dodge Denver on the lead up to the Western Conference Finals, it would not shock me if they make it to that point.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think that I want to echo what you said about the best cast of characters. I know that we raved a bit about what Dallas did this offseason in terms of retaining people, but also bringing in people. I know the Grant Williams thing didn't work out, but they were very smart moving on very quickly from him and finding a new body, right, to fill that role. So I think they've done a really good job of building around Luka. And I know that Cubes has always tried. He's not necessarily been able to make the right moves, and him and his leadership team, they've tried, right? But I think this year they have succeeded to really build that team around Luka. That I agree with you. Matchups are going to matter, but I think their ceiling is a Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
I think they can get into that 4 seed. I don't think they want to, right?
That's a tough draw. That's
a tough draw to have to face Denver in the second round because the NBA doesn't reseed, right? Not like the NHL and the NFL after the first round. They don't reseed, so the bracket stays the bracket. If the 8 or the 7 seed upsets the 2, you're not going to see Denver play the 7 seed, so you're getting Denver in the second round no matter what if you're the 4 seed or 5 seed, right? So.
Speaking of Grant Williams, did you hear the story about Grant Williams at practice?
I think I did.
So I'll tell it just real quickly.
Yep.
Michael Finley, former
Yep.
Yeah, so former Mavericks player. I believe he's in the front office now or something. This is when Grant Williams was on the team still in Dallas, but he liked to chirp players in practice, right? And so one day he was chirping at Luka, saying, you're not taking it seriously, you're not playing hard, all this stuff or whatever, just getting under his skin. And Luka just looks at him and says, okay. And the story goes, quoted from Michael Finley, Luka went on a 26-6 run in a 5-on-5 skirmish by himself with Grant Williams on the other team.
He fucking cooked him.
He said he did everything. Step back threes, floaters, layup package, breaking people down. Like 26-6 by himself.
Not the bear you want to poke.
No. I mean, that guy is so fucking good at basketball. It's so insane.
So good. All right, well, let's move on to our next subject. We've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but the big news over the last few days has been the fact that Kawhi Leonard, who is a huge part of any team he's ever played on, but especially this LA Clippers team, because he kind of orchestrated a lot of what this team has become, right? He orchestrated the PG-13 move to LA, and recruited, a couple other players to come along. I'm sure he was involved in the idea of getting James Harden in as well. You're not going to tell me that any team that has Kawhi Leonard on it doesn't run it by him before they make a move, right? He's one of those kind of supernova guys. So he has a back injury, and sometimes these back things can be really goofy and really lingering. But also, as mentioned a moment ago, the West is really competitive after the top three, right? So you go on maybe a week or a 2-week stretch where you're out without your best player, one of the best players on the planet, and you drop a few games, you could end up near the bottom of that kind of playoff seeding, playoff standing, and then maybe you end up with Denver, right? If you fall far enough to be in the play-in and end up as the 8 seed. So hypothetically speaking, let's say this Kawhi Leonard injury, because we've seen some conflicting reports, like back spasms, it might not be that long. Others have kind of said, it's a back thing, and these things can linger. So let's say hypothetically speaking, Kawhi misses extended time. What do you see as the ceiling for the Clippers without Kawhi Leonard?
It's a very good question, and I hadn't thought of it until just now. No, I'm kidding, obviously. my Sans Kawhi Leonard in the playoff, I would not be shocked if they get bounced in the first round. They could win, being one of the top 6, right? Not making, because I don't assume they'll make the play in, right? They're not going to fall that far. They'd have to go back.
That's a long way to fall.
A number of games, right? Yeah, they'd have to drop back 3.5 games. Not that far.
3 teams would have to pass them, though.
Yeah, you're right. So we'll say they make the playoffs, right? They're one of the top 6 left or 8 left. I could see them getting bounced to the first round because the Western Conference is so good, and because the playoffs are so matchup dependent, right? That's the big thing. Unless you have a guy that supersedes matchups, with which there may be 2 in the NBA, like Jokic, Luka. Maybe if you want to throw Embiid, but he's obviously injured, so that's another story, right? There's only a handful of guys that are non-matchup dependent. Kawhi is one of those guys. He can succeed in any situation in a playoff series. If you take that person away, I don't know how they match up against any of these teams in the West, given the talent remaining on that roster, which is still good, but so is everybody else because it's the playoffs.
Yeah.
Right? So if they lose in the first round, it would not shock me whatsoever if Kawhi is not there. They probably should win their first round matchup, even without Kawhi. They have a good coach. I like Ty Lue. They have James Harden. They have Russ if he comes back. They have PG-13. They have Norman Powell. They have guys, right? Ivica Zubac. They're a good team still, but you're not making a deep playoff run without Kawhi Leonard if you're the Clippers. It just is not the case. We've seen it every year that he gets hurt in the playoffs or isn't available for the playoffs, and they don't go far. There's a reason for that. Like, Kawhi is that good. He has to be on the court. So if you take him off, I would predict a first-round exit.
Yeah, that's the big important thing, right? It's the impact that you have of not having a guy like Kawhi, right? When you build a roster knowing that you've got a guy who he's your best player on both ends of the floor, basically, right? That's hard to lose. Now, he's not a rim protector. I get it. There's a skill set that he doesn't bring to the table that's very important on the defensive end, but he's your best defender.
Yeah.
Right? He can defend 4 positions. He can defend 5 if he needs to, right? With some of the fives that play kind of stretch 5 roles. He's that good on both ends of the floor that losing that is a big, big deal. They could probably survive losing any of those other 3 that you mentioned, right? The other 3 kind of the big 4 that they've got with Russ and Harden and PG. They probably could survive losing any of those 3 and still likely get through the first round of the Western Conference playoffs. But if they're without Kawhi, I'm with you. It wouldn't surprise me if they find a way to win it, they find a way to win it, that first round series, but it wouldn't surprise me if they get bounced early. Follow-on question for you. We didn't discuss this, so this is putting you on the spot.
Nice. Like
and
that.
it's really opinion based, so it's not like you don't have to go to the history books or anything like Ryan likes to make us do.
Yeah.
But how likely do you think it is that with the playoffs in sight, we probably aren't going to see Kawhi a whole lot down the stretch, considering the nature of this injury, right? It's a back injury. These things can be really dicey, especially running and jumping the way basketball players do. His age as well. He's not, 24-year-old Kawhi anymore. Do you think, and I think the important thing right now, I'm going to check it real quick, but his number of games played currently
58.
is 58.
Yeah.
And it's what, 65, I think is the number?
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong, 65? Okay. Do we see him get exactly 7 games with their remaining, how many have they played?
64.
So they've got 18 games remaining. Does he play 7 of them if he's healthy enough to play 7?
Oh God.
Or do you think that if he's healthy, they're gonna play it out and try to maintain that seeding?
So if he misses the next 11 games, he'd have to play the rest of the season leading up to the playoffs.
Yep.
I do think it's conceivable that he plays 65 games this year. I'm not sure. Kawhi is an odd bird, right? Like
very, very.
I don't know that he
not
cares.
Just a weird laugh. He's an odd duck.
Yeah. I don't know. You could tell me either way, because I don't know. I don't know if he cares about postseason awards. I don't know if he cares about making all defensive teams. I don't care if he's about making all pro team or all NBA, whatever. You could tell me he does, and I would believe you. You could tell me he doesn't. I would also believe you, because nobody fucking knows. Because Kawhi doesn't say anything, right? I think the only reason he would not come back before the playoffs, I think there's twofold, not the only. I think there's 2 reasons he would not come back before the playoffs. One, the team is just hot and they stay the 3rd seed or whatever. They stay in that top 4. 2, he physically cannot, right? If he physically cannot come back, we know that Kawhi is not going to force himself back. That's not something he does.
He sat out a whole season with a hamstring in San Antonio.
Yeah. So we know he's not going to force himself back. And then if the team continues to win, there wouldn't be a reason to bring him back.
Right.
Except maybe like if 2 games to get him back up, like his minute.
Take the rust off.
Yeah. Like if the team starts to kind of free fall, I could see him making a push to come back, right? If he's physically ready. If Ty Lue comes to him and says, "Hey man, like we need you.
We need to stunt this bleeding."
Yeah, like what did I say? 11 games. If they go like 4-7 in the next 11 games without him, I could see them being like, Kawhi, we need you. Just based off that 65 game model, right? It's such a tough call with him because again, we don't know if he cares about these things, and we know what we do know is that he doesn't like rushing back from injury. It's like, so I would imagine that we do see him back before the end of the season. I would not imagine that he plays 65.
Breaking news. Moments ago, Kawhi Leonard's playing tonight.
Okay, well, throw everything I said out the window.
I'm sitting here operating on the assumption that he was going to miss at least sometime. Holy shit.
Okay.
I am very, very surprised to see just moments ago they broke the news that, wow, Harden's out. He's going to miss tonight's game. He's going to snap his longest streak of games played since 2017. Well, Kawhi's back.
Okay.
Clippers are the sky's not falling in LA.
Nope. Not yet.
Very interesting. Well, I got to take back a little what I said about Dallas too, because I was assuming Clippers were going to play 500 maybe basketball over the next couple of weeks if they could survive without Kawhi. But breaking news here on the pod: Kawhi Leonard playing tonight. Not going to miss extended time. Good for him. Good for him. Good for them. Good for them for sure.
Did Shams text you that?
What's that?
So did Shams text you that?
Yeah, right. Good to see you, Dad. Sorry to hear you're having some trouble with your phone. Hopefully you get that sorted out. Let me know if I can help with anything. All right. Well, let's shift gears one more time. And let's jump into our final planned topic of the evening. And this one is very interesting to me. And I'm glad you brought it up because it made me do a little research as well to understand exactly what the situation is with LeBron James. So LeBron James has one more year technically available on his contract with the Lakers. He's got a player option for next year for $51.5 million, which is a lot of money. However, LeBron James has earned somewhere north of like a small country's GDP over the course of his career. So money is probably not an object for LeBron James down the stretch here, right? Of his career, he's probably chasing maybe another ring. We know there's the whole Bronny thing hanging out there. Bronny is probably not going to be in next year's draft. I don't want to offend LeBron. I apologize, right? Don't come after us because I know that that's a sore subject for him, but probably not going to be in next year's draft. So that all that said, what do you think is the future for LeBron James? And I'm going to add one more little piece to this, right? Because I think this is important. The Lakers are struggling, right? This year, they haven't been able to figure out the roster composition. They haven't been able to figure out how to build around LeBron and AD. LeBron doesn't make it easy with all of his demands and the way he kind of puts pressure on an organization. So with all of that in totality, all of that said, what do you think the future holds for 39 going on 40, 22 going on 23 years in the league, LeBron James?
So the boring answer of what I think is going to happen is that he's going to get a contract extension or re-sign, whatever, however you want to view it, with the Lakers. That's my assumption. That's also the most boring answer. I'll give you my reason as to why I think that's going to happen. So if you remember back in 2014, there was a man by the name of Kobe Bryant who also played for the Los Angeles Lakers. He was at the very end of his contract. He was coming off an Achilles injury. And the Lakers gave him a 2-year, $48 million extension, which was blasphemous.
Yeah, preposterous.
Yes, for the level of play that he was bringing to the court.
From a basketball and financial perspective.
Yes. However, and this has been a precedent for years, and it is well known amongst the players in the NBA, and most of the fans understand this, and all of the ownership groups get it. The Lakers take care of their stars.
Yeah.
It's what they do. They pay their superstars boatloads of money to play in what used to be the Staples Center, now Crypto.com, whatever. They pay you if you are a superstar. It's why you go to the Lakers.
They're going to have it to themselves here soon, too.
Yeah, exactly. No little brother in the house. LeBron is, I don't have to describe LeBron. He's a true blue superstar. He puts butts in seats. He's the second best player of all time. He is, by definition, a superstar. And what the Lakers do, we were just talking before the pod, the 28-27 season, they're going to be paying Anthony Davis $70 million because he's a superstar, and that's what they do. You mentioned, and I told you guys this the other day, it has changed because I think they've played like 2 more games. But as of the beginning of the week, as of Sunday, the Lakers over the last 2 full seasons and including this year, with LeBron James and Anthony Davis when they both play, are 85 and 82, which is pitiful.
That's unbelievable.
I mean, you have one of the best defenders to ever play the game in Anthony Davis, and you have maybe the best player of all time, although the poster behind me would say otherwise. He's going to re-sign with the Lakers. That's what's going to happen. Now, what I think he should do is not what's going to happen. I think that he should ring chase. We know this about LeBron. He wants 5. I think he's been vocal about it, right? He wants to win rings. He also was talking about playing with the Sun, but that Southern Cal has looked much better since they've gotten
Listen,
healthy.
Thanasis is still in the league.
Yeah.
There's a spot for Bronny somewhere on the end of a roster.
Yeah.
Worst case.
Yeah, but like all of the places where it would make sense to want LeBron are not places that are capable of winning a championship in the next 2 years.
I know.
Like looking at next year's salary cap, you got San Antonio with the most cap space, you got Charlotte with the second, then Utah, Detroit. Oklahoma City is an interesting one. They have the 5th most potential cap space next offseason. Or rather, I believe the offseason going into next season.
The problem with Oklahoma City, though, is what I mentioned a moment ago. LeBron is a fucking bull in a china shop when he comes into a team. He made them trade away. He made them trade away Wiggins in Cleveland and go get Kevin Love. And when they went to Miami, he demanded that he made the most money. And then they had to get this player and that player. And then he went to LA and they made them. He forced their hand to go get Anthony Davis, etc. He's just, I don't know that Oklahoma City and Sam Presti would be willing to do something like that, right? Because they've been so adamant about holding on to both draft capital and young players that I couldn't imagine him coming in and saying, we got to trade Chet and we got to trade,
God.
Giddey, and we got to trade maybe Dort and make the money work to go get X, Y, or Z super, like go get Giannis or whatever, right? I don't know that Oklahoma City would be willing to do something like that.
Talk about a clash of the Titans
right
there. Sam Presti,
LeBron James.
like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That would be incredible.
Yeah.
So what I think he should ring chase. I think Oklahoma City makes a lot of sense for that. The one that jumped out at me, though, the team that jumped out at me, Sacramento is up there on the list. They're 9th most cap space, right? I don't think he's going to Sacramento. Let's be honest. He's not a Sacramento guy.
He's not a light the beam guy.
Yeah. Sitting at 13th on this list of most available potential cap space next year is the Cleveland Cavaliers. There's been a lot of discourse around what Donovan Mitchell is going to do this offseason, right? Is he going to sign an extension with Cleveland? Is he going to request a trade? Is he going to try to walk in free agency and go play with the Knicks? I don't know what's going to happen to Donovan Mitchell. I also know that LeBron James is like the 2nd richest athlete ever. Yeah. So money really should not be an issue for him, but that's not the way these things work. He's going to request a max deal. He's going to want like $160 million for 3 years or whatever, right? I get that. What I think makes the most sense for him from a legacy standpoint and from a ring chasing standpoint is go to the East. Go back to Cleveland, take a team friendly deal. The average salary in the NBA is $9.5 million. Like, that's not nothing. If you could make $8 million, that's a team friendly deal. You get to play with Darius Garland, potentially Donovan Mitchell, LeBron in the starting lineup, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen. And if they re-sign Isaac Okoro, he's a defensive player off the bench. You got Dean Wade that can shoot. You got Georges Dieng or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. The minivan is his nickname. Dieng. Yeah, that guy that requested out of Philly.
Yeah.
It makes the most sense in my mind from a legacy and on-the-court standpoint to go back to Cleveland and try to win another championship there. He's not going to do it, though.
Yeah. No, I think that sounds right. Like it'd be an interesting scenario. Go home, maybe win another one, play with a little bit younger of a core. I don't see a lot of options.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's the big thing. You mentioned the issues with cap space, right? The teams that have the cap space are the ones that stink, and he's not going there. The Spurs are in an obvious rebuild. They're trying to get the first pick for the next 4 years so they can rebuild their dynasty. Pistons, same thing, right? They're trying to figure out how to put a roster together. Washington, again, they're trying to figure out how to put a roster together. Plus, they took on a couple of contracts this year that makes their cap situation look a little weird. But those teams are not destinations for LeBron. So you definitely you're in the right area, right? Somewhere between 12 and 16 or 18 in terms of whether you've got free money to spend. I don't know who's willing to bring on 40-year-old LeBron to maybe chase for one. I think the GMs that are willing to bring in LeBron and kind of gut a roster are probably the ones that work for an owner that maybe just wants to sell tickets, put butts in seats, and that's not a situation LeBron's going to go to. So I'm with you. I think the most likely scenario is the fucking missionary position answer of we're gonna re-sign in LA, run this thing back because AD's already signed his extension, and the Lakers are going to take care of him for another couple of years. He can stay right there where Bronny is playing at USC whenever he eventually gets minutes at USC. He can see him play there, stay close to all of the efforts he's put in with the community. His family's kind of put down roots there in LA. Yeah, I think that's the most likely. One that I sort of thought might be interesting to entertain would be down in South Beach, a return to Miami. It would take some finagling with their roster and kind of their cap situation, right? They'd have to figure out a way to probably move Tyler Hero and or Duncan Robinson or something.
Oh, do you mean the best basketball player in the world, Tyler Hero?
Yeah, exactly. They'd have to find a way to try to manipulate the money, but him and Jimmy Butler, I think, would be an interesting kind of clash of personalities to see on a roster together. From a purely entertainment standpoint,
yeah,
I think that would be a very interesting reunion with him and Spo, especially, but also to see LeBron James and Jimmy Butler, who are kind of very polar opposites in terms of personalities. Jimmy can be very brash and kind of low key and very serious, whereas LeBron is very kind of bubbly and vociferous and loud in terms of his personality. I think it'd be very interesting. I just think it would be an interesting scenario down there, and they've got some pieces that they can work with to maybe call it a ring chase, that sort of thing. But I know the money doesn't work really, really well. But if he's taking a free team-friendly deal in Cleveland, maybe he takes a team-friendly deal in Miami. I don't know.
There is an option here. I first off, I do agree that Miami would be very funny. That would be content gold from the NBA.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And we know they love content, the NBA.
Yeah, oh yeah.
There is an option where he does not take a team-friendly deal and he takes a shitload of money and goes to San Antonio. He goes because he plays for Team USA all the time, right? So he goes to place for Pop.
He loves Pop. He's made it very well known that he loves Pop.
They can drink wine together.
Yeah.
San Antonio is in a desert. LA is in a desert. Same stuff, right? Just no ocean.
You got a river.
Yeah, you got a river. You can walk.
You don't really want to swim in it, but
no. You walk by it. Is what
walk.
You do.
Yep, the river walk.
I don't think it would be crazy if he went to San Antonio. He can get paid a shitload of money. They have the most cap space.
Yeah.
And we know, as LeBron does, he recruits, right? So he could recruit guys to come play with him and Wemby, and they already have Devin Vassell. Like, he's going to be a free agent, right?
They're going to have another lottery pick this year.
Yeah, like, he could turn down his player option and become a true blue free agent. So they don't have to trade anything out of San Antonio.
Give up any assets.
So, like, you go to San Antonio, you play with Wemby, who is, like, basically a win-now player. He just has mediocre talent around him, right?
Yeah.
You bring in whoever you want because that's what RC Buford is going to let you do, most likely. You get some shooters, you get a point guard. Like, it's not crazy to me that San Antonio would offer this deal to try to accelerate the winning timeline. You mentioned they want to go for the number one pick the next 4 years overall. I don't know that that's the case. Like, maybe next year they tank for Cooper Flagg, potentially. But, like, I don't know. I don't think it's crazy to think like LeBron in San Antonio jersey.
Yeah, I mean, if they're not going to be in tank mode next year, maybe they trade that fucking lottery pick they got and go get a guy or two, right? Because you said it, they've got a ton of money. They've got basically no contracts on that roster, and they've got I believe they've got like some expiring money as well, so they're going to get even more, plus a trade exception probably carrying over because that's what Pop does. He's fucking savvy like that. Yeah, that would be very interesting to see. LeBron go down there and play with the unicorn Victor Wembanyama. And you never know what else they can recruit and come there. There's a list of guys that could become free agents this season as well. I don't know how many are going to get extended. We won't know until we get closer to that time frame. But there could be a number of really interesting players that could be free agents this coming season. And of course, as you put it, LeBron is nothing if not a recruiter when it comes to building rosters in the NBA for sure. All right, so we're going to make a prediction tonight, and it is no longer NFL season, but we do have a very important tournament coming up.
Maction, baby!
Yeah.
Toledo lost today.
Yeah.
So, number 1 seed Toledo.
We've had that's the third 1 seed, I believe, to lose in the group of 17 in basketball conferences. Yeah, there's like 3 times as many Division I basketball programs as there's football programs.
Yeah.
So, being that the tournament is being held in our vicinity,
yep.
We played a couple of rounds, so there's several teams that have been eliminated. Syracuse no longer has any hopes of going into the tournament and winning 2 games like they always do with the 2-3 zone after their embarrassing blowout loss to NC State. Clemson might have played their way out as well, but we still have the 2 juggernauts left. We may see a potential third matchup.
Oh, you're going to do it to me.
I'm going to do it to you, bud. Who's going to win the ACC tournament?
You know I got that shit on, dude.
Does UNC get knocked off before the finals, or is Duke going to avenge the season sweep in the ACC final?
No, it's going to be Duke, North Carolina on Saturday night. Although, as we speak, Duke is losing at halftime to North Carolina State. Yeah. Flip has 12 points in the first half. He has 12 and 5 in the first half. So, good night from Flip, but
tight game though. Tight game.
Yeah, 3 points at half.
They're not getting blown out like Syracuse was.
Yeah, that would
be bad.
Buddy, yikes.
Jesus.
So to make this prediction, I have to take you back to last Saturday. Game tips off. I'm thinking this is my Super Bowl, dude. I get it once a year. I get North Carolina in Durham. On Coach K court, in Cameron Indoor, the crazies are in the house, and the game starts, and 25-year-old Cormac Ryan is out of his fucking mind and is hitting everything. I think RJ Davis and Armando Bacot had like 6 points combined at halftime. So, sick, awesome. But you let a grown-ass man onto the court who just shot the lights out. 4 minutes into the game, they were down 15 points, which is not a winning formula, turns out. But now we know, right? Now Duke understands you can't go down 15
Can't do that.
With 36 minutes left to play. They did bring it back to within 3 late in the second half. I did appreciate the fight that they showed. I do think that it will be Duke and North Carolina on Saturday. If Duke loses to the North Carolina State team tonight, do not call me. Do not text me. I will be unavailable. I will be walking outside and throwing my phone in the Potomac River. That being said, Saturday night, I expect Duke to win that game. Duke has the talent to win that game. I told you this last Saturday we were texting. It's a bad matchup for Duke. North Carolina is bigger and more physical than is Duke. They play 3 guards in their starting lineup, Proctor being the biggest of them, and he might be the most slight of frame out of the 3 of them, with him, McCain, and Roach, who I love, by the way. Roach is climbing up my board of Duke players that I love. McCain is He's one of the best freshmen in the country. That dude's a freaking stud. But because Duke is undersized, they get out-rebounded in just about every game that they play, right? Flip is your biggest guy. That's not a recipe for success, I don't feel like. Now, we did remedy that by bringing in this big kid next year whose name I cannot pronounce, so I'm not going to try. 7'2" center. I believe he was in the African NBA Academy.
Yeah, the NBA International, what do they call it? The Development Academy or something along those lines.
Yeah. So, pedigree, right? Whatever. That's next year. I'm mulling on Cooper Flag. Boy, you guys think I'm fucking standing on the table for Duke this year. Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. No, I expect Duke to go into Saturday night and beat North Carolina for the ACC Tournament Championship. It does not bode well for their chances in the national tournament, but that's okay. I don't believe that they can win a national title. I don't think North Carolina can win a national title this year. So I would settle for winning the ACC tournament, which I do expect to happen. Duke is supremely talented. I believe in John Shire as a coach, and I just hate North Carolina, so I can't pick North Carolina.
Yeah. I'm going to take a stab at his name, but I know I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly. Common Malak, I believe, is probably
sounds good to me.
Not how it's pronounced.
You know who would know this? Fucking Ryan.
Ryan would absolutely. He'd be able to walk us through the pronunciation of it. For sure.
Tell me what village he grew up in.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. He may not be from Africa. I take that back. I'm going to be controversial.
He is. Yeah. We didn't say anything along the lines of anything our former president said.
Nope.
Keep that out of our mouth.
Yep.
All right, buddy. Well, hey.
Wait. What's your pick? You can't. No. Don't. You ask me. You make the selection now.
You're gonna make me say it.
Yeah, I am.
Only if you let me spell it correctly. I've got Duke avenging. It's hard to beat a team 3 times, man. It is so hard to beat a team 3 times. Mm-hmm. I think what Duke has suffered, Duke spelled D-O-O-K for the viewers out there.
It's right here. It's also right here.
Yeah.
Have you seen this shirt, by the way? Fire.
Oh, shit.
91, 92 Duke hoops, baby.
I like that. Yeah. That's cool. I don't like many things associated with Duke or Trinity College, but that's a pretty cool shirt. I just think the biggest thing for Duke is they've got to get off to a better shooting start to the game.
Yeah.
And I think they've got the ability. I think they've got the athletes to be able to do it. You mentioned they get beat up a lot. Don't miss shots, and you won't get out rebounded as badly as you have been. I think it really comes down to shot making and their ability to slow down in the offense. It felt like they got sped up a lot in that North Carolina game at really crucial times.
Yeah.
Saturday night, the most recent game that they played, but it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. So yeah, give me Duke in the trifecta to avenge their season sweep, get the ACC tournament. I agree with you. This field feels very wide open, so I won't say that a team has no chance of winning it. But it's hard for me to envision either Duke or Carolina winning 6 games to win a national title, just because of some of the deficiencies that each team has, right? North Carolina at times can get really, really stale, and Duke at times can just go through really bad dry spells in terms of shooting and scoring the ball. And as you mentioned, right, their rebounding ability. Rebounding seems to just always be like this huge factor in the tournament, because those arenas are not easy to shoot in. I've heard it from a lot of people who say, like, especially as you get closer to the Final Four and you're playing in the bigger arenas, they put a lot of especially the Final Four, they put them in football stadiums most of the time. Those are really hard to shoot in because of the backdrop, and rebounding becomes a very, very vital part of the game, being able to stay out of foul trouble while still being able to clean up the glass. So I'm with you. I don't know that I see either of these 2 teams making that run and winning a national title, but if you're going to force me to say it, Duke's going to avenge their loss Saturday night. Yeah.
I do have a follow-up question for you.
Yeah. What's up?
So this is a more broader look, and again, this may be better for the tailgate show, but since we're here, I'll ask you.
Yeah.
And it's relevant because Cormac Ryan is 25 years old. Do you feel that there should be an age limit for NCAA competition?
I think we're getting to that point, man. I think we really are. They have an age limit in high school.
Yeah.
In most states, not every state. I believe like 48 of 50 or whatever have like a cap. And in most states, like you can't play sports over the age of 19. Like if you're 20, like you can't play sports in high school because of physical development and whatnot. It's it's one of those things, right? You're playing against a dude who's got like a full beard in high school. Yeah. It can be tough, right?
Yeah.
I think we're getting to that point, but I will say this. I think it's going to self-course correct because the COVID year really screwed things up in terms of not only like interrupted the fact that we lost a tournament that year and Dayton might have lost a national championship that year.
Yeah.
But we've got, I mean, Caitlin Clark could come back next year, right? Not to just stick with the men's game. Like Caitlin Clark, who feels like she's been in college basketball for a decade, has an eligible year next year because of COVID, because of other things. There's a lot of people. Zach Edey is collecting AARP, playing basketball. Stetson Bennett was literally filing his retirement paperwork while playing college football. It's crazy right now, but I think we might get away with not having to go that route because of the course correction that comes along with like we're gonna be far enough away from COVID next year and even closer to that kind of far enough away in 2025, 26.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be closer to like, you're just not going to be able to be that old unless you're a Brandon Whedon that comes back to play at Oklahoma State. Right.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you that if the NCAA is going to continue to kind of be willy-nilly with granting extra years for people, because it's not just COVID. NCAA sometimes will just grant an extra year for guys for like a medical exception, yada, yada. Yes, I think we're at the point now where we've got to consider like, do we really want 25, 26, 27-year-old guys who have been in college for that entire time playing against those guys? I understand the eligibility and kind of how that thing works, but man, it does feel like you've got some grown fucking folks playing against some fucking 18, 19-year-old like kids, right?
Yeah.
Kids.
So something about watching two players play against each other on a basketball court and there's 6 years of difference.
Yeah, that's tough.
That doesn't seem like a fair college experience to me.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you. I understand there's going to be the one-off Brandon Whedon exception who went and played pro baseball, came back and wanted to play football, but yeah, I'm hoping we get to the point where like next year and the following year it's going to really self-correct and we just won't have it. But if not, if the NCAA is going to continue to grant these fucking exceptions, we need to start the chant for age limit, right? Start the grumbling for.
Where would you set it?
24, I think.
24.
I think because the way I look at it is you can redshirt, and then you get a medical redshirt, and that's it for me, right? You get one of each. I understand a devastating injury. You didn't play a number of snaps. Fine. The guys that I want to get rid of are the ones that were like literally opting out of the rest of the season. It was there was the big quarterback. Now his name's eluding me, but he basically quit on his team 2 games into the season because they had lost their first 2 games and like I'm gonna go to Miami next year. That's the one that kills me is when that's given an exception and granted an extra year. So.
Yeah.
Medical red shirt, and you're done. That takes you to 24. I'm okay with that being the cap.
That's fair.
What about you?
Yeah, I would have said I think 23 is probably the more because I like
start the year at 23 or
yeah, you have to be 23 when the year starts.
Okay.
Because I understand like my heart goes out to all the kids that have to redshirt for medical reasons. I get it. But you said it when I first brought it up, the physical development of a person, like you can, if you're 24 and you're playing against an 18-year-old, like that 19-year-old, whatever, like the human body is different at those 2 stages of life. They just are.
Yeah.
And it in the NBA, whatever, don't care, right?
Yeah.
This is college, dude. Like you're not supposed to be 24 years old and being a full-time college student playing a sport there.
Yeah. I think the math adds up for us, right? So like you figure at 18, you take a red shirt, then say you play a year, then you medical red shirt. So 19, 20, you red shirt, 21, you're a sophomore, 22, junior, 23, senior, into your 24-year-old. I don't want to see a 25-year-old on the fucking field,
No.
right? Or the court. I'm with you. 24 was kind of my 18 plus 6, right? Because 4 years plus your redshirt years. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't want to see 7, 8 years of you being a college athlete and playing against an 18-year-old. Yeah. I'm with you. Absolutely.
Specifically for Cormac, he was 25 when the season started this year. Like that's insane. I will say, however, there's a tight end at Miami this upcoming season who's going into like his 8th year of college.
Yeah. The Van Wilder of college football.
Yeah, I mean, like that's kind of cool. Like I get, he's like, oh yeah, I spent my entire 20s playing college football. Like that, I guess that's a cool story.
Sure.
And it's a little different in football.
Yeah, I think football is a little different.
It because like one player makes less of a difference than one basketball player, right?
Yep.
You know, I don't know. I just think it rubs me the wrong way when I see guys in their mid-20s playing college sports.
Yep. I'm with you for sure. All right, bud. Well, any closing thoughts for us on our way out the door here?
I'm gonna pick Houston to win a national title. I'm hoping that Tennessee wins the SEC tournament because then I think Houston, Tennessee, UConn, and Purdue would all be 1 seeds, and I would just pick all 1 seeds to go to the Final Four, and I feel pretty confident in that.
Those are your head and shoulders best 4 teams in the country?
Well, my head and shoulders are UConn and Houston,
mm-hmm.
And then next tier is Purdue, and then next tier is like Tennessee, North Carolina, Marquette. Like it kind of falls off after that. Like
I'm curious on Marquette. They're kind of my. I'm gonna wait and see if they're a 3 seed, what their draw looks like.
Yeah,
because I love the way they play, and of course Shaka's got experience going to a Final Four. Obviously he took VCU there, but I'm with you on UConn and Houston, though. It does feel like those are the 2 best teams in the country by a fairly good margin. Purdue, I think, is within shouting distance, mm-hmm. but I don't, right? I've got a separation between them. And then I think it is kind of a pick your own adventure out of a bag from that point. I think Kentucky's going to be a problem for people, the way they can score the basketball and their length, their athleticism. If they could ever make free throws, I don't know what it is about John Calipari teams, but they literally never make free throws. Kansas is going to be interesting because they're going to be a low seed, but if they get healthy, they are a scary team, right? From a kind of just a general perspective, right? They were on the 1 line not too long ago. They've kind of had a collapse to the end of the season, health issues and whatnot. If they get healthy for the tournament, they could be a problem. I still think Mick Cronin's got a decent team out there in UCLA. He'll grind you to death. Those teams will fucking grind you to death. He's done it everywhere he's gone.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be an interesting tournament. As I mentioned, I feel like the field is very open from about the 4th team to about the 68th team. I think it's pretty open from there. I do think UConn, Houston, and Purdue, I think you can kind of chalk them into the Final Four for sure. I like Tennessee. I like where your head's at with Tennessee as well, but I think it's going to be an interesting tournament. I think we're going to see several double-digit seeds on Sweet 16 weekend.
Could be, yeah. It wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah.
I am going to bet on Princeton in round 1 if they make it.
Yeah.
All they do is win the first weekend.
It's just fucking Ivy League teams, man.
Yeah.
Cornell did it for a few years. Princeton's done it. Harvard's done it. Yeah, they'll come up. They're kind of like Syracuse has that too, right? If they get in the tournament, nobody wants to fucking play them because that 2-3 zone.
Yeah.
Shit. Well, hey, man. Appreciate you. Good episode. Ryan, if you tune in on your break, we missed you, buddy. We'll see you next week.
Not that much, though.
For Bentley and everybody else here at Backyard Sports, this has been another episode of Backyard Buckets. We are out.